Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 165.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and you know what? I'm excited today. I'm just excited because, as many of you are aware, it's NBA playoff time, and I'm sure you're paying attention to that. But most importantly, if you've been listening to the podcast for any length of time, you know that one of the things that I am looking forward to do, one of the stories that we are working to change, is being able to go out there and help athletes, professional, collegiate, etc., change their entire identity after playing. Because you know what? Once the days of the ball are over, there's still life there, and you've got to have the skill sets to be able to make these things happen. So I'm excited about today's guest because he has that exact same passion. More importantly, he has been a podcast listener. I didn't even know it, which is great. And he's a real estate investor as well. And one of the great things to understand is that real estate has such an appeal to so many different people. You have no idea. And that's what's exciting because many of us can use it for our own purposes, just like today's guest. So you're like, who is it? Well, it is none other than B.J. Johnson. He's the current assistant director to the men's USA basketball, and he's been at USA basketball for a decade, and he's had an inside look at working with athletes and, most importantly, understanding their need to have additional financial education. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So help me welcome Mr. B.J. Johnson. B.J., you there?
I'm there. I'm here, actually.
You're there, you're here, you're
I am
everywhere.
there, everywhere. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
awesome. That's awesome. I'm definitely glad to know that the podcast makes a difference and that you are out there listening. And I know that you're out there buying real estate. We were just talking about a new acquisition for your portfolio just before we started, and I'm just excited when I hear that type of stuff. Now, before we go there, though, because I'm sure you know the exact question I'm about to ask at this point, but before you were the assistant director at USA Basketball, before you had your own real estate portfolio going, before you were over there, and doing your own thing, who is B.J. Johnson?
Well, always, it's a pleasure to be here after listening for so many episodes to be a part of this and have that question asked to me. I'm really excited to be a part of the show today. But to answer your question, I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm born and raised there. My mom raised me with 5 other siblings, so 6 of us total. And my dad died at an early age, so my mom had to do a lot of hustling and all that. But she got us all through, and we all have our college degrees and made it through. So grew up in Greensboro and went to school at Villanova University. And I played basketball, growing up, and had dreams of grandeur to play in the NBA and all those kind of things.
We all had that one.
Yeah, and it didn't quite work out like I expected it to. However, it's one of those things where in the process of really reaching toward a dream, you become something. The process makes you into something that I had no idea was making me into. So by going through that process, I didn't get a scholarship coming out of high school, which I wanted to, but I was able to get into Villanova University, and I ended up trying to walk on there. So I got cut my first year. The second year, I was ready to go, and they canceled tryouts. So I was like, I'm going to try out. I'm going to try to get this thing a go, reach my goal every year until I make the team. So finally, actually my sophomore year, I ended up being a manager for the women's team. And then my junior year, they invited me to be on the team. So I didn't even have to try out. So I played 2 years at Villanova, and then my last year I needed a fifth year, and they actually gave me a scholarship. So after a long journey, I was able to finally reach my goal, not the way I anticipated originally, but nonetheless, I was able to reach my goal in terms of getting a scholarship at a Division I university and playing there. So completed my career in 2002 at Villanova, and I thought I was going to go overseas to play basketball in China. Chinese was my minor in college, and I wanted to go to learn the language and study over there. So they were starting up a college league in China that I thought, but it fell through at the last minute. And I was kind of stuck in limbo. I got into law school. I was thinking about going to law school as well, but I deferred for a year thinking I was going to go overseas. So being caught in limbo, didn't know exactly what I was going to do for that year. My old youth pastor from Greensboro had moved out to Colorado Springs, and out of the blue, kind of reached out and got in touch with me and wanted to see if I wanted to come out there and check things out. So not having anything else to do at the time, I decided to go and check it out. And, I helped them out for their outreach ministry for about a few months, and then ended up working at Lockheed Martin as a software engineer. And then, when I realized that USA Basketball was in Colorado Springs, I didn't know that at first. Then I remember my current boss had come to talk to our team one time. So reached out to him when I found that out. And then a couple of years later, they had a position open up there. So I applied, and kind of rest is history. So I've been 10 years here at USA Basketball, and I've had a chance to do some incredible things, going to 2 Olympics, work with some of the best players and coaches in the game, traveling around the world. So it's been a dream come true. So looking back to when I first started playing basketball, I might not have written this path for myself, but, in the process, by going through and not giving up, my life has been incredible beyond what I could ever imagine or thought of originally.
Yeah, yes. I love that a lot. I mean, well, to be honest, I'm kind of envious. I want to go to the Olympics. I still haven't been, and you've been twice. I'm like, awesome. I think that's great, personally. So that's really amazing. And there's this story. I see this thread of perseverance. You got cut. Then you're the manager for the women's team. That's definitely. I'm sure that was not on your list anywhere. No. You're like, no, that's not it. But I'm wondering, in your lessons that you've learned to get this far, and the lessons that you've learned as a player, and making those things happen, I also know that at some point in this story, you began to purchase some real estate, and I'm curious if any of those lessons that you've learned through that have helped you be able to begin your own real estate portfolio, and if so, what lessons were they?
There's no greater training ground than athletics for any area of your life, and especially as being an entrepreneur or an investor. The lessons that you learn being an athlete, you say it often, failing fast, failing frequently, and failing forward, is played out every single day in the life of an athlete.
That's true.
So having those lessons, and there are a lot of long days where, am I ever going to reach my goal? And for me, a lot of my stuff was, since I didn't have my father there in the house, I was self-taught, so I had to figure it out and learn and watch videos and things like that to kind of help me with my game. And it's the same thing now that I do have some great mentors, with me. But, at the end of the day, you still got to, kind of put in the work by yourself. So, all the training, all that financial education, from playing a cash flow game to listening to podcasts to reading to all those things there, it's the same process in a way to go through and educate yourself and give yourself the best chance of success. So yeah, all the lessons that I learned, on the playing court, has definitely translated over to me, applying these lessons to real estate. And I'm just getting started. We currently have 3 single family houses, in North Carolina, and we're in the process of closing on a 4-plex next week. But it's just one of those things that there definitely been some starts and stops, and wondering, am I ever going to find the deal? And then continue to persevere. And sometimes deals will kind of just show themselves. I didn't necessarily, the ones that I've gotten, I didn't necessarily find. They kind of just presented themselves. So I'm a big believer in, if you continue to do the right things and continue to put forth the effort and time, then things kind of just happen. Some people call it luck or whatever, but I just feel like, it's a divine thing where if you, put in the right things and are prepared to handle the blessing that's coming forth, and it just somehow presents itself to you and allows you to take advantage of it.
And that I find that to be very true. I mean, that whole luck thing, I don't necessarily put a whole bunch of weight behind that either. For those of you looking for a quick definition when it comes to luck, it's just laboring under correct knowledge, and it helps to have the big man upstairs on your side. Otherwise, you're definitely in trouble to begin with. But I'm interested to know, because you're doing this real estate thing, and I know there are a number of people who are listening who kind of do the real estate thing on a part-time basis, or they have a job or something else at the same time. And I'm really interested to know how your journey from that zero house to that first real estate property. That's what I think is an interesting little piece, is how did you manage that thought process and then the courage to go and still take action, knowing, that it might not work out?
Yeah, so my journey is a little different or interesting. So my first house kind of happened upon it. We got into a little bit of trouble financially with my mom, and she needed me to help out with the house. So it kind of made sense for me to take over the house in my name. So that was the first deal. I didn't really know much about the whole process, and kind of just I got the house now, and so we're trying to.
Hey, I'm a landlord. Now what?
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of different with having family there. And then I got married, and my wife, she moved from Greensboro to Colorado with me. So we decided to just keep her house and try to rent it out. So that was kind of our introduction to real estate. And then the last one, again, unconventional a little bit. Her grandmother had passed away, and her mom was trying to maintain two houses, and she got into a strait where she was, not able to maintain both. So she needed us to take over. So, all right, let's try it. So we got the third one from her grandmother, and it needed a lot of work. It was built in 1942, and the floors were, it's like a roller coaster going from one side of the house to the other, and it was going to fall in on itself at any time. But at that point, we had already started, our process of financial education, and understanding, what to do and what we wanted to get out of the house. So we ended up having to borrow some money, but we were able to get the house fixed up and learned a lot, through that process in terms of renovations and how long it takes and the process and all that kind of stuff. But in the midst of all that teaching ground, we were able to get the house to restore it to a good place, and now it's currently renting out and doing very well cash flowing wise for us. So that was kind of our introduction. So I wouldn't say that I was the, go out there and find the deal, but they kind of just, out of necessity kind of happened upon us. And then, for this current one that we're getting ready to close upon, we worked with a real estate agent. He knew we were looking, and there was someone else that had kind of fallen into some straits with a fourplex, and he wasn't in bad shape, but just was not making money for him. So we were able to make money on the buy. I was able to, from the education that I had learned was really a big thing, so I could understand what the property was really worth from an investor's point of view, which was significantly less than he paid for it. But at that point, I think he was just tired and done with it. So I was able to get, this current fourplex at a really good price for us, and making a few changes to hopefully lower some of the expenses that he was getting hammered on and things like that. We feel like it's going to be a really, really good thing for us. So that being said, it's one of those things, like the first three kind of just happened upon them, and then but now understanding how to structure, in terms of how we want to use the cash flow, how to handle it, how to report, and then understanding what a good deal is. To me, that's the biggest thing. It's one of those things that once I understood what a good deal is, I could, I could see the good deals and see the potential in deals and understand what I need to make a good deal an even better one. And that's been the biggest thing for us. So we're excited about, even though we're just starting out, really, we're excited about what the future holds.
Oh, you have no idea how excited what you have me right now. This is exactly why I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. You look for problems, not properties. You look for problems, not properties. And you heard that over and over again. You heard 4 examples of, hey, there was a problem. The person happened to have a property, and being able to take over the property or rework the property, either from a financing perspective or ownership perspective, was what was needed in order to solve the problem. And then it's like being able to identify a good deal. See, the true purpose of education is to train you and I to recognize an opportunity. The challenge is most of us are only trained to recognize one type of opportunity, and that is usually spelled J-O-B. But that's why I love playing the cash flow game, because it teaches you to recognize opportunity. My challenge is everywhere I go, I see opportunity. My challenge is to literally shut it off because it's like I can't help but go, ooh, you can buy 2 of those and 3 of these and look at that right there. Everywhere I go, it becomes a pain. But I'm assuming you're beginning to experience this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's exciting for us. And it's funny. I want to go back to just a comment you just said. The cash flow game has been a huge thing for us on a couple of different fronts. Me and my wife playing, it brought some stuff out of us that we had no idea. So it was more than just a financial education game.
Yeah.
It was marital marriage therapy for us.
Yes. I tell everybody, especially if you are a father with daughters, teach your daughter how to play the cash flow game and use it as a pre-screening for all of those men.
That is great.
Oh, you have no idea. And that my wife and I discovered the same thing. There's so much we learn about each other from an emotional makeup standpoint playing the game. It's you're like, it's just a game. How is this possible? But yet all of these things come out, and then you get the challenge of dealing with them. That's
it really is
for sure. Now, as we talk about this, I mean, you being on the inside, you've managed to make this transition, or making this transition into not just having one stream of income, but multiple streams of income, using the ability to own property to continue to build your wealth, etc. When you're working with, you've worked with athletes now for a long time. So you've seen the stories from the beginning. You've seen the person before the NBA, the after the NBA, at the Olympics, and all the way down and up and in between. What would you say they need, in order to be able to how can we get rid of that story, that cliche of I used to play ball and now I'm broke?
Yeah, that's the heartbreaking thing. I mean, there's a variety of stories, as you mentioned, just from either guys that you think are, surefire, stars, and then they get an injury that they can't overcome, and then now they're lost, and they end up making decisions like, what happened to this guy? He was on such a track, and there's so many stories like that. And there are other guys that kind of do well, guys he didn't think about, and they end up kind of going on and being really successful. But to me, the bottom line, whether they're successful, playing wise or not, is to empower. One of my goals is to empower athletes to make good decisions, or just empower people to make good decisions. It's one of those things that, you can tell people what to do and how they should do it or whatever. But when you empower them to kind of understand who they are and how they can make decisions based upon who they are, then to me that takes on a whole different thing. Instead of just doing what you've heard you're supposed to do, but don't really have a full understanding of why you should do it, to really giving, these, in my case, athletes, the tools to make wise decisions, whether it be financially, whether it be in their relationships or whatever. Once you can give them the tools to make good decisions, I think you can eliminate a lot of problems. I kind of characterize it, like this. If you were given a 16-year-old kid the keys to this fancy sports car, and you gave them like an hour crash course on what they need to do to drive, and you hand them the keys and tell them to go drive, a lot of times, like for these guys that we have, they're coming into wealth and time, unlimited time so quickly, after they're, 17, 18, 19 years old. And, they're told to, all right, go make the good decisions, and they give them, maybe a seminar on this or seminar on that. But, it's not really, giving them the full, power, the tools that they need to make good decisions, to understand why and and what decisions they're making today, how it impacts them in the future. So that's where my passion lies, to help these guys to, not just tell them what to do, or, you don't go broke. That's the common thing.
Right.
But how do you go about that process, and how are the decisions you make today going to impact you, in the future, and how can you assure yourself of kind of setting yourself up, to make, the best possible decisions. One quick story in terms of that, there's a guy that we work with, and he's doing really well, has a great future ahead of him. He's in the NBA currently, and they were so excited when we talked to his parents. They were so excited that he saved $1 million in the bank, which is a great thing, an unbelievable thing. But, from now, the education I have is like, with inflation, with all the other stuff that's kind of going on, that $1 million is getting eaten away.
Right.
Why not be able to have, a way to put that money into action so that it doesn't have to be super risky. But as Robert says, Kiyosaki says that, when your financial education goes up, your risk goes down. So give them the tools to make these good decisions so that they can, use that money and have it working for them, consistently as opposed to just sitting there.
Well, and that's the thing. You bring up two very specific things. One that I just want to say that I think is awesome. Many people complain or talk about somebody should do something about that. Somebody should, hey, that's a problem. They need to fix it. You're not pointing the finger and just saying they need to fix it. You're actively helping, but not only actively helping, but you've also chosen to step in that gap and more or less be that example. I mean, you're not just saying, hey, you guys should do this with your money. You're showing by actually doing it yourself. You're showing by going through the first, second, third, fourth, and now you're going to have 7 units. You're like, you realize you're doubling your portfolio. Sorry, I'm just excited. I get excited for these things because I know that transformation and what that feeling feels like. You just like, oh my gosh, this is really happening and it's happening to me. And you're choosing to stand in that gap. And I think that's absolutely incredible. And you also speak to the other point. Many people say to me all the time, and I hear it all the time, Jay, if I just had the money, this and that, and I would have, no problems. And I'm just like, no, you don't understand. Just like you're talking about. Just because you have, $1 million, even if it's sitting liquid in the bank, that doesn't mean you don't have a problem. You brought up inflation. Yeah, that's the silent killer that most people don't see. And at the same time, you have the need. Everyone has this need to go from piles of cash to streams of cash, and very few of us know how to do that very thing. So I'm guessing that I'm assuming that this individual that you're referring to is not the only one.
All right, as you guys know, we've been running the contest. Well, we're still doing so. I wanted to make sure that Shawnee Mac 85, send us an email over to info@cashflowdiary.com because you are the winner of this week's Cash Flow board game. We're going to keep giving these away. Go ahead and all you got to do to enter is if you would like to get a copy, your very own copy of Cash Flow, so that you can play the game, go out there, learn some real estate investing, and get things done, just leave a review on iTunes. Again, the written review on iTunes. So log into your account, leave a written review for the show, and you'll be automatically entered to win. Hopefully you're enjoying this. Let's get back to helping some more athletes.
No. I mean, there's so many guys that just don't have any ideas. So they do the best with the knowledge that they have. But, there's not a lot in terms of, especially even those that are trying to teach them, they kind of teach from, old traditional methods of, let's open up our IRA or 401k and let's trust that to take you through and, put aside all this. But, and I've seen, a lot of people that, even non-athletes where, they had that and then they're getting ready, some guys were ready to retire and then crash hits and now they got to work 10 more years, So understanding that there's a risk in everything, and the riskiest thing is not understanding, the nature or just understanding business and understanding, finances. To me, that's one of the riskiest things that I've learned, over the process of these 3 years. And that's where I'm really, desiring to hopefully, empower these guys, that we're working with now, to be able to have the education to make good decisions. And like you said, I don't want to, it's one thing to talk about it, and tell them what to do, but if I'm not modeling it myself and, they're asking questions like, so what are you doing? And if I'm just saying, well, I want to do something, it's not as powerful as is, I'm actually out there doing it and I've seen the benefits of it myself. So that's where a lot of my motivation has come from, to work with these guys and to be able to have, my own portfolio so I can show them these are the steps I take. This might not necessarily be the route for you, but at least it exposes them to something different. And it's helpful to have, to be honest, you have your own money, and these guys, a lot of times it's a issue of trust with these guys. There are a lot of people that are coming up with them with their hands out and things like that. So and that's never the position I want to be in. I don't really need anything from these guys, but I want them to know that, first of all, I've done well for my own self, so I don't need that from you. I'm just looking to empower you so that you can live, and empower your family and even other young people that are coming after you to make the very best decisions for them as possible.
And you bring up, again, another interesting point. One of the challenges that I've consistently had is everyone knows that, Jay's a college dropout, didn't finish that. I have no letters after my name. I just know how to go out there and raise capital, buy real estate, and do this thing. That's what I know how to do. Been doing it for a while now. And when you compare that to the the traditional advice that you're given from, say, a financial planner or what have you, and you look at all those certifications, the additional the thought process is to, well, he's got all these certifications, so he or she must know what they're doing, and the bury your head in the sand mentality, I don't think it's just not going to work, or it won't work long.
Absolutely, no question, and that's the thing that is just, and that's what everybody feels like is the truth because so many people are saying it that people start, especially these young guys and their parents, they take it as truth because so many people are saying the same thing. But when you understand, you look deeply at what your money is actually doing and the risks you are taking, then you can understand what truth really is, and that's what I really want to expose to these guys. You don't have to do everything like you said, like what I'm doing, but at least you have a knowledge and understanding of, at the end of the day, by you making these decisions to whether put your money in that 401k or to invest in real estate or invest in a business or whatever, you should understand exactly what you should expect to receive, with that, and the risk that you're taking on for each individual thing that you're talking about, at the end of the day, so, and make those decisions based upon that.
Now, yeah, and this is what I love, because I don't know if everybody caught it. He's working to expose these concepts, and that's how we got into this particular conversation right here. Is that BJ sent us an email, and we started talking, and I was like, "What are you trying to do?" And he's like, "Well, this, that, and the other." So, tell us, why do you care so much, and why is it so important for you to do these things? Because I'm curious, and I'm sure it's going to be very similar to myself, but I'm just curious, why care this much?
It's one of those things that I didn't choose it per se, but there's a burning passion. Exactly. There's a burning passion inside of me to see young people develop, whether they're, elite athletes or not. I want to see them, to be the best themselves as possible, be the best you possible. And I don't know where it came from, but it's just one of those desires that I can't shake, and my avenue to do that is through basketball. And that's where we, in thinking through how can I help, the guys that I've been currently given, to help them make the best decisions possible. That's why I want to reach out to you, to listen to your podcast and to bring you in to our group to help them kind of, see, all the things that you're doing, as well as learning the principles from the cash flow game and things like that. I think it could be a huge help to our guys, but I just feel like I have a higher calling. I'm a believer in Christ, and that's one of the things I feel like He's put inside of me to empower young people to be the best themselves as possible, and that's what I would desire to do. And any undertaking that I have, whether it be with basketball or without, I'm always going to be doing that because I think that's just such a core of who I am.
And that makes, well, again, obviously it makes sense to me. I love the idea because when you said, "Hey, what do you what do you think about helping with the playing the cash flow game and whatnot?" I'm just like, I think it's great. I love to play the game. That is amazing. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit about what we're doing so that they can have an understanding of why you and I at least are as excited as we are, because we've played the game before. But tell them a little bit about what we were doing right now.
Yeah, so I'm extremely excited, to be having this discussion and to be planning to have you come out to Colorado Springs. So what we have with USA Basketball, everybody knows about the Olympics, which is our probably most high-profile event. But our first age group is under 16. So these are freshmen and sophomores in high school that are just completing the freshman and sophomore year of high school. And then we'll have them in to compete in the under 16 FIBA Americas Championship, which is the Championship of the Americas. We're going to go down to Argentina on June 6th to hopefully win another gold medal down there. But in the midst of this, we bring about 30 athletes out to Colorado Springs to try out for the final 12-man roster that will represent our country down there at that tournament. And in the process of selecting a team, it's one thing. Our biggest thing is to continue to win gold medals and to dominate competition internationally. But in the process, we also want to teach the athletes different things that they might not be getting anywhere else. So we have things like sports psychology that we'll do, and a lot of body mechanics and how to take care of their bodies and eating well. And the one piece that we hadn't really addressed was financial education. And when we recognize how quickly some of these guys are going from the under 16s to the NBA, 4 or 5 years time, there's really not a lot of time, in between, that. So to give them some tools now that they can process over the next 3 or 4 years before they get to that level became to me a really glaring need that we really need to go about addressing. So that being said, after listening to your podcast, I wanted to swing for the fences. Like, I wonder if Jay would be willing to come come out and be a part of our camp and teach these kids, some of the things he's learned. It's just not only that, just the things he's learned, but just your story in general of how you've overcome, adversity, to say the least, if you want to say that. But in your life to get to the place where you are now, and having a person of color, would be, a tremendous thing for me. But a lot of these guys that, don't see that often, as much as we should. So I thought, that's why I wanted to reach out to you guys, and I'm very excited that you can come out and be a part of our group and talk to the kids about what you've done and play the game with them. And like I said, we're not trying to, we won't, kind of make them, investors right away, next day. But, the bottom line is that, they will have, we talk about staining their memory, so they'll have an experience that they'll always be able to look back on, and they'll have principles and truths that they'll know are truths, and they can, hopefully whet their appetite to continue to dive in, look more, so that as over the, next 3 or 4 years time, that they can continue looking at these things. And then at the time when they do start receiving their first, contract, they can, already be in the process of making decisions that will kind of carry them on to some of the goals that they might have thought about 3 or 4 years prior.
Yeah. And I tell you, I've been so excited. It feels like May is all about basketball because we're doing yet another event with BCI Edge on the 2nd over in LA. And I'm just excited to do. It's like I could just do this cash flow game thing over and over and over again everywhere I go. And it's fun because I've seen previously when we've done these types of things, a lot of the kids end up reaching out either on Facebook or some form of social media, letting me know, hey, these are the decisions that I'm making today because I played the game. And many people just don't understand the impact that one game can have. And it's just amazing because I know it did that for me. It does that for nearly everybody who plays in various different ways. There's something about it that sticks with you no matter where you go. And even if we just change the story of one person, I think it'll be more than worth it. What do you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that with our guys, by changing just one person, you can have a wide-ranging impact on, millions of people,
Right.
just in terms of their reach. I think about, guys like Tyus Jones, Jaleel Okafor, Justice Winslow. They just won a national championship at Duke, but we had them as freshmen in high school, so and now they're getting ready to step into the NBA. So, just, having those guys that have such a high profile, by impacting their lives now, you can reach so many young people, even adults, by their story and the type of people that they are just in general. But, by impacting their lives, there's such a huge opportunity to reach, millions of people possibly because of the reach that they have and the visibility that they will have.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I'm definitely looking forward to it myself. I'm over the moon excited about it. I haven't made it to the Olympics yet, but maybe I'll have something with USA basketball on it by the time I get back.
Exactly. I think we can make that happen.
Because that's definitely fun. So that's good. So let me ask this question. If someone right now, maybe they're playing, maybe they're an ex-professional or professional listening right now, from the work that you've done, what are some of the, I guess, top 3 mistakes that you've seen professionals make that they could still do or possibly prevent themselves from doing so that they could have a shot after the playing days are over?
One of the things is, first of all, the education part of it. I heard some great advice from one of our trainers. I asked him, what would you tell young guys getting into the league right away? And he said, start planning, what you want to do afterwards at your first day. So having a long range view and not just living for the moment. Sometimes it's easy when you're, having a lot of money or you're young, you feel like you have enough time, that you kind of get, you don't have the long range view that you should. So one piece of advice is to look long range, not just for the short term, but, how the decisions you make, the connections you make. I mean, there's a lot of great opportunities to make connections, whether it be if you're playing professional or just in everyday lives, but you never know that how powerful one connection could be, in your life. So to have a long range view and to value, relationships, but also one thing that it trips up a lot of guys, especially professionals, is the ability to say no. And that's one of the hardest things. I'm still trying to learn that myself at times. But, there are a lot of people that would come to you with stuff, and the hardest part are those that are closest to you, so your family members and people like that. When you don't have boundaries, and they feel like you're kind of like an ATM machine now that you have all this money available to you, not having those boundaries and not kind of processing what you would do in certain situations can really trip a lot of people up. I know one player, that was supporting 50 people, and
Did you say 50? I just want to make sure I heard
50 plus actually. So,
wow.
So I understand that now he's struggling a little bit financially. Go figure. But it's just things that there are a lot of these guys that they get put in these positions and they don't want to say no. They don't want to be called a sellout. They don't want to be called that you forgot about us, kind of thing. And people end up taking advantage of that. So that's one of the hardest things I think that a lot of guys fall into, is that you try to take care of everybody, and they have a lot of these guys have such good hearts. Sometimes they get portrayed in the media as just being these arrogant, people. But a lot of these guys have big hearts and want to help their families out. But there comes to, you have to have certain boundaries so that you can be in a position to help yourself out in the future. And not have that well run dry. So getting the financial education, having a long range view of life and not just living for the moment, and then having boundaries set up to protect yourself as well as others. Going back to the car example, a lot of times if you gave that kid a car, that he can, without the proper training, he can be a danger to himself as well as a danger to other people out there if he doesn't know how to drive. And that's kind of the situation a lot of times with these athletes, that you give them all this stuff, and by not having the tools and to make the best decisions, sometimes they can make these decisions that it hurt them as well as hurt others around them as well. So those are to me the biggest three things: the education, having a long range view, and then having the proper boundaries in place and the proper structure in place. Not only just boundaries of being able to say no, but structuring so that you understand what a financial statement is, so you understand what's coming in, what's going out. So if you do have an advisor, you can kind of keep a track of them and what's going on that way. And there's so many different things, but those are to me are my top things that I would tell anybody to kind of have those things in place.
What's funny is we're trying to make this distinction, like the athletes are the only ones that have the problem. I mean, that's the same for all of us. Well, I don't know too many people who are supporting 50 people, but nonetheless, everything else you said definitely is very, very true in terms of, how we go out there and make things work. So, if now to that person who's, I guess part of what I'm thinking is, to that person who is, maybe they're still working a part-time job right now or a full-time job, and they're trying to do a part-time, real estate thing. What would you say to that person who's like still considering it, thinking about it, wondering, nervous, etc.? I mean, you've gone through this. So pretend you're talking to yourself, to some degree. And what would you say, knowing what you know now?
I think the most important thing, like I said, the education, I really understood that as being the most important thing. So finding great resources, whether it be through, Cashflow Diary, there are a wide variety of really good resources, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad stuff, and Bigger Pocket, all those different, there's a lot of really good resources out there. So, educating yourself on those things to me, are the most important, so that when, opportunities come, you can recognize a good opportunity, when you see it, is the biggest thing. And the second thing that's really, really hit me hard recently, and I think it's started to help me prepare for the future, is I had a great example that was given to me. Was if you were going to someone and you need to get some water, and you need to bring water back to your family or your group, one person went with their hands cupped and asked them to pour the water in there. And by the time, when they got the water in their hands, and by the time they got back to their people, they didn't really have much in there because the water had kind of gone through their fingers. The next person had a bucket, so they were able to pour the water in the bucket, and they were able to transport, the water back to their people when everybody was able to get something to drink. So that example taught me was, to have this proper structure set up, especially for our real estate business. So we need an LLC. We need the proper protections that way. We need to, understand what a good deal is, to be able to have, all of our accounting set up properly, build our team, which I'm pretty much saying, have all those things in place, whether it be your tax advisor, and, having all the things structurally set up so that you can run an efficient and good business. That way you're not spending so much time, and it's not as stressful because things are already prepared and set up in the proper structure. And that way you can kind of let it automate itself. You can check on it and kind of continue to monitor it. but you're not trying to plug holes, constantly, which could be the stressful part of it. So that's where I'm still, in the process of learning more of that. And, like I said, I'm in the beginning stages. But, that's to me has been the biggest thing, having, the structure, the business structurally sound and set up in a way that it can hold a blessing, and, that way, even though I'm still working full time and this is our crazy season and we're working, 80, 90-hour weeks at times, then I feel like this can still be a viable option for us where, property management is in place so I don't have to worry about, getting these crazy calls or at the middle of the night. All those kind of things there, having things set up properly, so that you can kind of have peace of mind, know that things can run themselves, well.
Yeah, totally understood. I get it. Well, if you're out there working 80 or 90 hours a week right now, I don't want to take up much more of your time. I do want to say that I am extremely excited, looking forward to going to Colorado to catch up with you and see whose life we can plant some seeds in and hopefully influence in various different ways. And I definitely want to say thank you for taking the time to invest here with the Cash Flow Diary audience.
No, thank you. If I can add one last comment about that, for those that, it is possible. Sometimes you feel like you're so busy and those that have kids at home is, you don't want to risk anything because of the kids. And there's so many, there are so many reasons not to invest. But to me, the reasons to invest far outweigh those reasons, and to find the extra hours, if you have to sacrifice a little bit of sleep or whatever, it's well worth your time. I'm looking at what it's doing, we're in the beginning stages, but it's really changing me and my wife's lives. It's given us options that we didn't even know about before. And it is possible, it really is possible. Even at our busiest time, I recognize there's always time to make time for what you want to do, and it really is possible. So I'd encourage those that are really busy and stressed about it, not sure if they can do it. If anybody can do it, if I'm doing it right now, then you definitely absolutely can do it. So I just want to offer that encouragement.
Awesome. That's great. I mean, hey, 90 hours a week doesn't stop him. So it shouldn't stop you either. So that's good. Again, I thank you for taking the time to share with us your thoughts, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me, Jay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. You're like, Jay, but he didn't tell us to do anything. Yes, he did. He said, get started, make it happen. Most importantly, you know that there's someone out there, probably yourself, but there's also others out there who are looking at you, waiting for you to go out there and be successful. They are using you as the example, waiting for you to do something. And once you do it, then they'll go out there and make it happen too. So with that in mind, what can you do in the next 24 to 48 hours to move your business one step forward? Figure that out and make it happen. Guys, it's been fun talking to you today, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.